While my kid was fighting for her life, my parents were posting brunch pics. Then on day 4 in the hospital, I got a text from my mom. "You're doing okay, right? Can you wire $4,000 to help your sister's kid get iPads for Christmas?" I blocked her. The next day, my dad called over and over. When I answered, he shouted. I didn't sleep the first night, not even a minute. The beeping from the monitors was steady. The fluorescent lights never dimmed, and I kept watching the rise and fall of my daughter's chest like it might stop if I looked away. She was 10. She could have been home building a snow fort, not hooked up to machines with bandages wrapping half of her body. It happened on the walk home from school. It had just snowed the night before, and she was so excited. She ran ahead a little, trying to catch snowflakes with her tongue, her backpack bouncing behind her. We were crossing the street when a delivery van lost control. The driver hit a patch of ice. He tried to stop. He couldn't. He was in the crosswalk. I was only a few feet behind her. The next moments are hard to describe, and I probably won't ever be able to fully talk about them. He survived, that's what matters, but the injuries were serious. 2 broken ribs, a fractured pelvis, internal bleeding. They rushed her into surgery within the hour. The doctor said she was lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt like the world had cracked in half. It was a blur after that. I moved into the hospital room, barely ate, barely spoke. Her face was pale, her body still. I sat beside her, holding her hand when I could, whispering things she couldn't hear, watching monitors like they were lifelines. The day after we got to the hospital, I sent a message to the family group chat, just a short one. I didn't have the energy to write paragraphs. I told them there had been an accident, that she was in the hospital, that it was serious. No one responded, not even a question mark. Nothing. I stared at that silent thread for hours. At first I figured they were busy. My mom and sister were always rushing around with the bakery they owned down in Myrtle Beach. Maybe they hadn't seen it, or maybe they didn't know what to say. But then late that night, when I finally opened Instagram just to distract myself, I saw what they'd really been doing. My mom had posted a full photo dump, brunch at some waterfront cafe, fancy waffles, flower-shaped butter, glasses of champagne. My sister was tagged in the first photo, smiling in a new coat. The caption said, "Self-care Sundays with my best girl, we earned this." I stared at it for a long time. Not because I cared about the food. It was the timing. How do you sip champagne and post about self-care when your granddaughter is in a hospital bed 2 states away? That was day 2. By day 3, my daughter had started to stir. She whispered something in her sleep that I didn't catch. The nurses said it was a good sign. I sat there all day talking softly to her, telling her stories from when she was little. Still no messages from anyone in my family. Then day 4 came. Just after 8 a.m. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen and saw a message from my mom. It said, "You're doing okay, right? Can you wire $4,000 to help your sister's kids get iPads for Christmas?" That was it. No, "How's she doing?" No, "I'm sorry," just a request for money for iPads. I didn't even think. I just blocked her. No drama, no fight. I sat there in that stiff chair in that cold hospital room with my half-sedated child and quietly removed my mother from my life. Then the next morning, my phone started ringing over and over. It was my dad. 7 missed calls in less than an hour. On the 8th, I picked up. The first thing he did was shout. He didn't ask how his granddaughter was. He didn't lower his voice. He didn't even say hello. He went straight into how disrespectful I was, how blocking my own mother was cruel, how I'd embarrassed her for no reason. I let him talk. He kept saying my mom had been worried about me, that she was just trying to help my sister, that Christmas was stressful for everyone. At one point he said, "Your sister has 3 kids, Linda. You know how expensive that is." I looked at my daughter while he talked. She was asleep, bruises faintly visible under the blankets, tubes still taped to her arm. I wonder if he'd even seen the photos I sent to the group chat. I wonder if he'd scrolled past them like ads. When he finally paused, I told him she'd been hit by a van. I told him she'd had surgery. I told him I hadn't slept in 4 days. There was silence on the line for a few seconds. Then he said, "Well, accidents happen." That was when something in me shifted. I asked him if Mom had told him about the iPad text. He said yes, and then added that I could afford it, that I always made things about money, that my sister needed a win this year. I told him I wasn't wiring anyone anything. I told him my child was still in pain, and I wasn't leaving her side to go argue with a bank clerk over Christmas electronics. He sighed like I was exhausting him. Then my mom got on the line. I didn't realize she was there. She said I was being dramatic, that kids heal fast, that holding grudges would only hurt me in the long run. She reminded me that when my sister needed help, I always disappeared. I hung up. That night, after the nurses dimmed the lights, I sat alone in the room and finally let myself cry quietly. I felt stupid for ever thinking my family would show up. I felt angry at myself for expecting something different this time. And then, in the middle of that, another thought crept in. One I had avoided for 10 years. My ex. He didn't know about our daughter. At the time, I told myself it was easier that way. He had moved on fast. New job, new life, eventually a new family. I convinced myself I was protecting everyone, especially her. Sitting there in that hospital room, listening to the hum of machines, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit before. I had been doing this alone when I didn't have to. The next morning, while my daughter slept, I found his name in my contacts. I stared at it for a long time, and then I pressed call. I hadn't heard his voice in over a decade. When he picked up, I almost hung up. But he said my name first. Not angrily, not confused, just like someone who'd been thinking about it too. That threw me off. I froze for a second. Then I told him. I told him everything fast and flat because I didn't trust myself to say it twice. I told him he had a daughter, that she was 10, that she was in the hospital, that there had been an accident and she was alive but barely. I didn't know who else to call. The line went quiet for a second. Then he asked, "What hospital?" I told him. He said, "I'm coming. Don't hang up. Text me the room number." I said, "Wait, you live..." And he'd already ended the call. I didn't expect him to show up, not really. I sat there hating myself for reaching out, for dragging him into it, for hoping. But 2 hours later, he walked through the hospital room door. He looked exactly the same, just older. Same walk, same jacket, same stupid calm expression. He didn't even look at me first. He went straight to her bed. He stood there for a minute, quiet. Then he sat down beside her and just whispered her name. I don't know how long we stayed like that. It felt like time stopped. Then he turned to me and said, "She looks like you." I told him her name, her favorite things, that she liked drawing and swimming and hated peas. I told him she'd never asked about her dad because I'd never given her a reason to. I told him I didn't know if I was doing the right thing by calling. He said, "You did." And then he said something that shocked me so much I actually laughed. He said, "I always knew you were hiding something." I blinked. What? "I could never prove it," he said, "but I always felt like you left with more than just a suitcase. I just thought if it was true, you'd tell me when it mattered." Then he looked at me, and I knew he wasn't mad, just sad. "I didn't want to ruin your life," I said. He shook his head. "You didn't ruin anything. You just kept me from knowing her." That night, he didn't leave. He sat up with me while she slept. We talked not about the past, not about us, but about her. I told him everything I could remember from every year he'd missed. He didn't flinch once. He just listened. The next morning, he called his wife. I expected a fight. I expected her to scream or cry or demand he come home. Instead, she said, "Then you need to be there. We'll figure the rest out later." That shocked me even more than the fact that he showed up. He stayed 3 nights in the hospital. On the 4th, my mom tried calling again from a different number. I declined. Then I got a message from my sister. "If you think this little stunt gets you out of Christmas, think again. You owe Mom an apology." Before I could even respond, he took my phone, texted back one sentence, and blocked her. He handed it back and said, "You don't owe them anything." Then he smiled and said, "But you do owe me a picture of her first birthday. I'm not leaving without it." And for the first time in weeks, I laughed. We got to go home 5 days before Christmas. She still needed help walking, still woke up in the middle of the night crying from pain or half-remembered flashes of the accident. Her body was healing, but everything else, the fear, the panic, the way she clung to my hand like I might disappear, that would take longer. Ben carried her up the stairs. I unlocked the door, and for a second everything felt wrong. Like the house hadn't been waiting for us. Like life had kept going without us in it. I walked through each room like a stranger. Then I saw the stuffed bear on her bed. The laundry had never finished. The crayon marks on the wall she was supposed to clean. And I remembered this was still home. That week was quiet in a way that didn't feel real. Ben stayed just like he said he would. He made breakfast every morning. Actual breakfast, like scrambled eggs and toast, not just granola bars. He helped her with her meds, even found a way to make her laugh while doing it. He acted like he'd always been there. She called him Ben like it was normal, and he never pushed for more. We hadn't told her yet. I thought it would confuse her or overwhelm her, and I was terrified it might backfire. But I honestly think she knew. Maybe not the full truth, but something. Kids are better at reading people than adults are. She lit up when he walked in the room, trusted him without hesitation. One night after she fell asleep, I found him sitting on the couch looking at the photo of her on the fridge, the one from her 3rd birthday, frosting all over her face. He didn't say anything, just stared at it for a while. Then he asked if I still had the video from that day. I did. We watched it on my phone, both of us quiet. I don't know what hit harder, seeing her tiny voice sing happy birthday in that squeaky little way, or the realization that he'd missed so many of those moments. Not because he didn't want to be there, but because I never let him. The next day, the messages started. "My mom first. Heard you're back. Hopefully you've calmed down." Then a longer one. "Christmas Eve is at our place. Your sister is making her famous stuffing. Bring the kid. Let's not make this into a thing." I showed Ben. He didn't say much, just scrolled through the text slowly. Then he looked at me and said, "You don't owe them this." I nodded, but I could feel that old pull, the guilt, the second-guessing. They always made it seem like I was the problem, like my reactions were the real offense, not what they'd actually done. But this time I didn't cave. I wrote back, "We're not coming, please don't text again. You weren't there when she almost died. You don't get to pretend now." They didn't take it well. My mom called 3 times, I didn't answer. Then my sister texted, "Wow, you've made everything about you again. If Mom cries at dinner, it's on you." I laughed, actually laughed, because it was such a ridiculous thing to say, like I hadn't been the one crying alone in a hospital chair while they posted brunch photos. Ben said, "Want me to respond?" I told him, "No, it isn't worth it anymore." I turned off my phone and got back to wrapping presents. Most of them were small books, puzzles, socks, one tiny art kit I'd found on sale. She didn't care. Just seeing the tree lit up made her smile. Then on December 23rd, just after sunset, the doorbell rang. I assumed it was a delivery. I opened the door without checking. It was Ben's wife. She stood on the porch in a long coat, holding a tray of cookies in one hand and a Target bag in the other, packed full of gifts. She smiled and said, "Hi, so he told me everything." I froze. She kept going. "I'm not mad. I mean, I was for about 2 hours, but then I saw the photos. I saw her and I figured, if you're not going to your family for Christmas, maybe you could come to ours." She held out the cookies. "Besides," she added, My kids already made a spot for her at the table. I stood there in the doorway, not saying anything. My brain was still catching up. Ben's wife just smiled, patient, like she knew it would take me a minute, like she understood something I didn't even understand yet. Behind me, I heard little footsteps. My daughter peeked around the corner holding the stuffed bear she hadn't let go of since the hospital. She looked at the woman on the porch, then up at me. "Is that the cookie lady?" Ben's wife laughed. "I guess I am now." We didn't go that night. I still wasn't ready. But she didn't leave empty-handed. She gave my daughter a gingerbread man and promised to come back tomorrow. But only if you save me one piece of the art kit magic I keep hearing about. Christmas Eve came fast. Ben asked again, gently, if we wanted to go. I said maybe. He didn't push, just packed the car like we were going anyway. And I surprised myself by saying yes. We drove through a quiet neighborhood filled with twinkling lights and those inflatable yard decorations kids always point at. My daughter leaned her head against the window the whole ride, watching every blinking snowflake. Ben's house, their house, was nothing like mine. Bigger, newer, decorated like a Pinterest post. But the moment the door opened, it didn't feel cold. His wife met us at the door again, wearing an apron with flowers on it. Her two boys ran past her, yelling something about a game. She smiled like it wasn't chaos. Inside, it smelled like cinnamon and roast chicken. Someone was playing Christmas music. The boys dragged my daughter to the tree immediately and showed her how to make paper snowflakes with scissors that barely cut. Ben stood to me in the doorway. We didn't say anything, just watched her fold herself into this new place like she'd always belonged. Dinner was awkward at first. Of course it was. I was sitting across from a woman I had unintentionally blindsided with the existence of a whole child. I was sharing a table with her sons, who didn't know yet that the girl eating mashed potatoes next to them was their half-sister. But then, in the middle of dinner, one of the boys looked up and said, "She's kind of cool. Can she come over next week too?" Everyone laughed. Even me. And just like that, it felt different. Like the air in the room shifted. My daughter was glowing. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't in pain or scared or asking if I was okay. She was just a kid again. After dinner, while the kids played with their new puzzles and the grown-ups sat with coffee, Ben pulled out his phone and showed his wife a video from the hospital. Just a short one. Our daughter drawing with trembling hands, smiling like nothing had ever gone wrong. His wife watched it all the way through. Then she looked at me and said, "You know, we never thought we'd have a daughter, but I think maybe we do now." I didn't cry, not then. I waited until later, when the kids were asleep on the couch and Ben offered to drive us home. I looked at them, all three tangled under a blanket, and said, "No rush." So we stayed a little longer. We ended up staying the night. It wasn't planned. I hadn't brought pajamas or a toothbrush. And my daughter only had the clothes on her back and the stuffed bear tucked under her arm, but no one made a big deal about it. The kids had fallen asleep on the couch in a pile, my daughter in the middle. A peppermint still stuck to her sleeve. Both boys leaning against her like they'd been siblings their whole lives. Ben's wife came over with a blanket and covered them all without saying a word. She looked at me and said, "You're not driving home in this snow." It had started falling again, thick and quiet. The streets were already turning white. I opened my mouth to say I'd be fine, but she cut me off before I could start. I made up the guest room. You're staying, no arguing. So I stayed, lying in that room, warm, quiet, unfamiliar. I couldn't stop thinking about how strange it all was. This wasn't supposed to be our Christmas. A month ago, I was bracing for another lonely holiday with a half-decorated tree, discount presents, and silence from my own family. And now I was falling asleep in the house of a woman I barely know, next to the man I used to love, listening to the sound of our daughter snoring softly in the next room. I thought I'd feel like an outsider, but I didn't. In the morning, I woke up to chaos. Happy chaos. Paper ripping, kids yelling, someone shouting, "He's got the dinosaur!" And then the sound of little feet racing down the hall. I walked out and found the three of them sitting around the tree, half dressed, already knee-deep in wrapping paper. My daughter was holding a drawing kit, one of the good ones, and showing it off like it was treasure. Ben's wife handed me coffee. Real coffee. Hot. Not burnt hospital sludge. "Welcome to Christmas," she said. We watched them open gifts. There were extras for my daughter, wrapped and labeled with her name. Thoughtful ones. A scarf in her favorite color, a hoodie with her favorite animal, a set of paints with glitter that made her gasp. None of it was extravagant. It was just right. Ben sat down next to the kids and said, "Okay, so we need to tell you something cool." I tensed for a second. He looked at me, made sure I was still good with this. I nodded. Then he told them. Told them the girl they'd spent the last 24 hours playing with was their sister. That they had a sister. That I was her mom. There was silence for a moment. Then the older boy grinned and said, "Wait, for real?" Ben nodded. "Awesome," the kid said. Like someone just told him he won the lottery. "Can she live here?" Everyone laughed. My daughter didn't say much. She just leaned against Ben and didn't move for a long time. Later, when things had quieted down, Ben walked me to the car. The snow had stopped, but everything was white and still, like the world was holding its breath. He glanced toward the house, then at me. "You could stay," he said. "I mean, not just tonight. Really stay. We could figure it out if you wanted to." I didn't answer right away. I didn't know, not yet. Everything was still too new, too fragile. But something had changed in me, I felt it. Not just because he showed up, but because they did. All of them. They made room for us without asking for anything back. No guilt, no manipulation, no backhanded comments, just room. I looked at the house, at the window where 3 kids were still waving at us, at the woman who had baked for my daughter like she was her own, at the man who had dropped everything the moment he knew she existed. And for the first time in years, I believed it. We weren't alone anymore. Maybe this wasn't the Christmas I planned, but maybe, just maybe, it was the one we were meant to have.